This boy claimed to be Kurt Cobain in a past life, and it's one of the most chilling reincarnation cases in history, Pora. The year was 2018, and the place a quiet, unassuming suburb of Seattle, Washington. Not far from the rain-soaked streets where a musical legend once walked, a different kind of mystery was beginning to unfold. Corralho. The focus, a 7-year-old boy named Leo Maxwell. His parents, Sarah and David, were your typical suburban couple. David, a software engineer with a penchant for classic rock, and Sarah, a dedicated kindergarten teacher whose days were filled with glitter and the joyful chaos of young minds. They lived in a comfortable 2-story house with a manicured lawn, the scent of blooming hydrangeas often drifting through open windows in the summer. The sounds of distant traffic and the chirping of crickets were usually the most dramatic elements of their evenings. Pora. Leo was, by all accounts, a perfectly normal child. He loved Legos, cartoon superheroes, and the endless possibilities of a muddy backyard. He had a mop of sandy blonde hair that perpetually fell into his bright blue eyes, a gap-toothed grin, and the boundless energy characteristic of his age. He'd spend hours drawing fantastical creatures, his imagination a vibrant, untamed wilderness. Sarah would often find him humming nonsensical tunes, a habit she attributed to his developing creativity. David, ever the music lover, had introduced Leo to a wide range of artists, from the Beatles to modern pop, hoping to ignite a similar passion in his son. Leo seemed to enjoy it all, tapping his foot along to whatever was playing. But beneath this veneer of typical childhood, something peculiar was stirring Pora. The first signs were subtle, easily dismissed as childhood whimsy or an overactive imagination. Sarah noticed Leo had an unusual aversion to certain textures. Corduroy, for instance, would send him into a quiet, almost distressed state, a stark contrast to his usual boisterousness. He'd sometimes stare off into space, a pensive, almost melancholic expression on his young face, a look far too mature for a 7-year-old. David recalled a time he was playing a Nirvana song, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," in the car. Leo, instead of singing along or asking for a different song, had become oddly quiet. "That's not how it goes," he mumbled, almost to himself, his brow furrowed in concentration. David, amused, had asked, "How does it go then, buddy?" Leo just shook his head, looking out the window, a distant sadness in his eyes that David couldn't quite decipher. Pora. Then came the nightmares. Vivid, terrifying visions that would wake Leo in a cold sweat, screaming about loud noises and bright lights, and feeling trapped. Sarah tried to comfort him, asking for details, but Leo could only articulate fragments, a sense of overwhelming pressure, a desperate longing for quiet, and a pervasive feeling of being misunderstood. He started developing an unusual sensitivity to loud sounds, flinching at unexpected noises, retreating to his room when the TV was too high. One afternoon while drawing, Leo began to sketch a guitar, not the simple cartoonish guitar of a child, but a detailed, almost anatomically correct depiction of a left-handed instrument, complete with intricate fretwork and what looked like specific pickups. When David saw it, he was stunned. "Leo, where did you learn to draw a guitar like that?" he asked. Leo simply shrugged, a faraway look in his eyes. "It just came to me, Pora." The true revelation arrived on a crisp autumn evening as the family sat down for dinner. David had put on a documentary about 90s rock, and a segment about Nirvana came on. As images of Kurt Cobain flashed across the screen, his iconic messy blonde hair, his worn-out sweaters, his intense gaze, Leo dropped his fork. His eyes, usually so full of youthful innocence, now held a disturbing intensity. "That's me," he whispered, his voice barely audible but laced with an undeniable conviction, Corralho. Sarah and David exchanged a confused glance. "What's that, sweetie?" Sarah asked gently, thinking he was mimicking the TV. Leo looked directly at the screen, then back at his parents, his eyes wide and earnest. "That's me. I used to be him. I remember, Pora. A stunned silence fell over the dining room. David, a lifelong Nirvana fan, felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Leo, honey, that's just a man on TV," he said, trying to keep his voice light, but a tremor betrayed his unease. "No," Leo insisted, his voice gaining strength. "I remember the music, the way my stomach hurt, the feeling of being so tired all the time. And the flannel. I hated corduroy. He then started humming a melody, a distinct melancholic tune that David recognized instantly, the opening riff of Come As You Are. A melody that, to his knowledge, Leo had never heard him play or sing in its entirety. Sarah, trying to rationalize, suggested, "Maybe you heard it somewhere, sweetie. Daddy plays a lot of music." Leo shook his head vehemently. "No, I played it. I wrote it, Porra." He then described with surprising accuracy the layout of a recording studio, talking about mixing boards and amp stacks, and the smell of stale cigarettes and coffee, details far beyond the scope of a 7-year-old's understanding, let alone exposure. If this shocks you so far, subscribe and tell us in the comments what you think about reincarnation, Porra. The Maxwells, a family rooted in logic and reason, were thrown into a maelstrom of confusion and fear. Sarah, a teacher, initially sought psychological explanations, thinking perhaps Leo was internalizing something he'd heard or seen. David, however, felt a deeper, more unsettling connection to his son's claims, given his own admiration for the late musician. They tried to gently probe Leo, hoping to find the source of his elaborate fantasy, but his conviction never wavered. His memories, as he described them, weren't fleeting images but a coherent, deeply felt narrative, Porra. Word of Leo's extraordinary claims eventually began to seep out, first to close family friends, then to a local journalist who had a knack for uncovering the unusual. Soon, their quiet suburban home became a nexus of curiosity and skepticism. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a parapsychologist renowned for her work in childhood reincarnation cases, was among the first outsiders to arrive. Skeptical but open-minded, Dr. Vance had developed a series of rigorous, controlled tests to assess such claims. She brought with her a team of historians and music experts, Porra. One afternoon, Dr. Vance presented Leo with a series of photographs of various guitars, some iconic, some obscure. Among them was a picture of Kurt Cobain's famous Fender Mustang, painted in Lake Placid blue. Leo pointed to it without hesitation. "That's mine," he stated, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I painted it." He then proceeded to identify other instruments used by Cobain, including specific models of distortion pedals and amplifiers, using terminology that stunned the music experts present. "He's talking about a big muff," one whispered wide-eyed. "How could he possibly know that, Porra?" Later, a historian specializing in grunge music history showed Leo a series of photographs of places significant to Kurt Cobain's life. His childhood home in Aberdeen, Washington, the various apartments he lived in Seattle, and even specific recording studios. When shown a picture of a dilapidated garage, Leo's eyes clouded with a familiar melancholic expression. "That's where I wrote About a Girl," he murmured, almost to himself. The historian, a stoic man named Dr. Harrison, gasped. He described the exact location where Cobain claimed to have written that song, a detail not widely publicized and certainly not something a child would encounter, Porra. The most chilling test came when Dr. Vance presented Leo with a series of handwritten lyrics, some genuine Cobain lyrics, others fabricated to test his discernment. Without faltering, Leo not only identified the authentic lyrics, but also corrected subtle grammatical errors or slight alterations that Dr. Vance had intentionally inserted into the fake ones. He even recalled specific lines that were never officially released, snippets from early drafts that only a handful of people in Cobain's inner circle would have known. "This part was better," he'd say, pointing to a deleted verse. "It made more sense then." The room, filled with seasoned professionals, was left in a state of utter disbelief. The scientific mind struggled to reconcile the impossible knowledge pouring from this innocent child. Porra. The climax arrived during a televised interview with a prominent journalist, which was being filmed in the Maxwells' living room. The pressure was immense, the world watching. The journalist, known for his incisive questions, challenged Leo directly. "If you were Kurt Cobain," he asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice, "is there anything at all, that only he would know, something nobody else could possibly confirm?" Leo paused, his blue eyes distant, as if sifting through a lifetime of memories. Then he looked directly into the camera, his voice clear and resonant. "There's a note," he began. "A letter. It's not the one everyone knows. It's hidden in a specific place, behind a loose brick in the fireplace in the house on..." He then named a specific address in Seattle, an address not publicly associated with Cobain's final days, but one he had privately rented for a brief period. It's folded small, and it's about needing to be alone, really alone, and it has a drawing on the back, a rough sketch of a black cat with a broken tail, Porra. The revelation sent shockwaves through the production crew. The journalist, initially dismissive, was visibly shaken. This was a detail utterly unknown to the public, a private, intimate memory. Immediately, a team of researchers and a lawyer representing the Cobain estate were dispatched to the mentioned address. After several tense hours, they confirmed Leo's account. Behind a loose brick in the fireplace, precisely as Leo described, they found a small, folded note. It was indeed a private letter, expressing a profound sense of isolation, and on the back, a crude, undeniable drawing of a black cat with a broken tail. The silence in the Maxwells' living room, watching the live report, was deafening. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. David sat, pale and trembling. The world watched, stunned. The proof was undeniable, physical, and utterly supernatural, Porra. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The Maxwell family's lives were irrevocably changed. Leo became a global phenomenon, a living enigma. Scientists scrambled to find rational explanations, proposing everything from complex cryptomnesia to elaborate hoaxes, but none could account for the impossible details Leo had provided. Religious leaders debated the implications, some seeing it as divine proof of the soul's journey, others as a demonic deception. Historians re-examined the life of Kurt Cobain, finding new nuances in his lyrics and interviews through the lens of Leo's startling memories. The music world was in an uproar, fans and critics alike grappling with the idea that their beloved icon might, in some inexplicable way, have returned, Porra. For the Maxwells, the initial fear slowly gave way to a profound, if unsettling, acceptance. They loved their son, Leo, and regardless of who he might have been, he was still their child. Yet there was a palpable sense of living with a ghost, a legend peering out from behind the eyes of their 7-year-old. Leo, for his part, seemed to carry the weight of 2 lives, occasionally exhibiting an old soul's weariness, but mostly he remained the bright, curious boy they knew. The case of Leo Maxwell challenged everything humanity thought it knew about life, death, and consciousness. It forced a fundamental question upon a skeptical world. If a child could truly remember a life as famous and impactful as Kurt Cobain's, what else lay beyond the veil of our understanding? What secrets did the universe hold about the journey of the soul, and was death truly the end, or merely another beginning? The echo of a forgotten melody, the whisper of a past life, seemed to resonate through the very fabric of reality, leaving humanity to ponder its deepest mysteries, Porra. What do you think, Corallo? Could this child truly be the reincarnation of Kurt Cobain?